Hello friends, welcome back to the Gate of Heaven video diary, where we are continuing our journey through the Dawnbreakers, Nabil's chronicle of the story of the Bab, who is the inspiration behind my new album Gate of Heaven, and whose life is being celebrated this year, the 200th anniversary of his birth. But before we dive back into the story, I just want to say a huge thank you for your response to, your really wondrous response to the new song, Wondrous Paradise, which just came out on Saturday. And really, I'm so grateful to you for listening to the song, for sharing it with your friends. I hope you'll continue to enjoy it for a long time to come. As I said, it's one of my personal favorites from the album, and I'm looking forward to sharing more songs from the album with you as we continue this journey over the coming weeks. So keep your eyes and your ears on the Facebook event page, Gate of Heaven album release, because there will be more songs coming out soon. But in the meantime, on the subject of Wondrous Paradise, there is a particular story, a particular episode in the Dawnbreakers around this point where we're at, which I wanted to share with you. It's during this period when the Bab has come back to Shiraz, and he is living for a really temporary period of relative peace and tranquility back in his home in Shiraz. He's officially confined to the home of his uncle, but really it's a period of it's a somewhat more relaxed period compared to the things that have happened and the things that are to come. And he's living a life of relative tranquility with his wife and his mother and his uncle, and essentially he is under the care of his family. But during this period, the word continues to spread about the Bab's message. His writings are still flooding out across Iran and through the Middle East. And there are many people who are coming to Shiraz to meet the Bab and find who is the author of these writings that are causing such a transformation in people's lives. And there's one particular story I wanted to share with you during this period. The Bab is at his uncle's house one night, and he's at there's a social gathering there. The Bab and his uncle and several friends are sitting around in the uncle's house talking. And at one point during the conversation, the Bab turns to one of these friends whose name is Abdu'l-Karim. And he looks into the eyes of Abdu'l-Karim and says with this utmost tenderness, he says to him, "Abdu'l-Karim, are you seeking the manifestation?" And Abdu'l-Karim looks into the eyes of the Bab, and he just bursts into tears, and he's so overcome with emotion that he just throws himself on the floor and weeps at the feet of the Bab. And the Bab picks him up and embraces him and kisses his forehead and calms him down. And there's this sort of confusion in the room amongst all these friends. So at the end of the evening, Abdu'l-Karim and his brother, who's also present, leave the Bab's uncle's house and they go home. And when they get home, his brother asks Abdu'l-Karim, "What was that? What just happened?" And Abdu'l-Karim goes on to tell his story, which is recounted in his own words in the Dawnbreakers. So I'd love to share Abdu'l-Karim's story with you. It's very touching. He says to his brother that night, he says, "I will relate to you the tale of a strange experience, a tale which I have shared with no one until now. When I attained the age of maturity, I felt, while I lived in Qazvin, a profound yearning to unravel the mystery of God. Nothing short of the acquisition of learning, I realized, could enable me to achieve my goal. I succeeded in obtaining the consent of my father to the abandonment of my business. I plunged myself immediately into study and research and concentrated my efforts on the acquisition of every available branch of human learning. At night I would retire to my home and in the seclusion of my library would devote many an hour to undisturbed study. I was so immersed in my labours that I grew indifferent to both sleep and hunger, Within 2 years I had resolved to master the intricacies of Muslim jurisprudence and theology. So Abdu'l-Karim in his youth immerses himself in study, trying to just learn. And he eventually enrolls in the School of Islamic Studies in his hometown of Qazvin. And he just aces all his studies, he passes all his exams with flying colours, and he graduates from the School of Qazvin, with honours. And he's, on the day of his graduation, he's of course lavished with praise and congratulations. He's now graduated as an authorized interpreter of the Quran, and he's the object of huge congratulations from all his peers. And the night of his graduation, he comes home and his father has prepared this big feast, and to celebrate his son's accomplishment. And when Abdu'l-Karim arrives home, he sees this feast being prepared, and he finds himself struck by a strange disappearance of his confidence. He feels a huge anticlimax in his graduation from the school, and he asks his father if he could postpone the feast until he's feeling a bit better. So his father postpones the feast, and that night Abdu'l-Karim goes to his room, and he says he's just plagued by these feelings of doubt and this lack of confidence, and there's this voice this voice of self-doubt starts to rise up inside of him, and he says to himself, "Your aim in acquiring all this learning has been to unravel the mystery of God and to attain the state of certitude. Be fair. Are you sure of your own interpretation of the Quran?" And he says, "The consciousness of error suddenly dawned upon me. I realized for the first time how the rust of learning had obscured my vision. I lamented my past and deplored the futility of my endeavours. I knew that the people of my own rank were subject to the same afflictions. As soon as they had acquired this so-called learning, they would claim to be the exponents of the law of Islam and would arrogate to themselves the exclusive privilege of pronouncing upon its doctrine." So Abdu'l-Karim sinks into this depression. He has spent all these years acquiring all this book learning, accumulating all this knowledge in his head, but deep down in his heart, he feels like nothing has really changed. He's still afflicted by this lack of confidence and this self-doubt and this constant anxiety. And he says, continuing on the night of his graduation, he says, "I wept so bitterly that night that I seemed to have lost consciousness. There suddenly came to me the vision of a great gathering of people, the expression of whose shining faces greatly impressed me." So Abdu'l-Karim has this dream where he sees this gathering of people where there is a class going on. It's a classroom, and there's a teacher who is teaching a class centered around a particular quote from the Quran that kind of indicates that whoever makes an effort for a noble purpose will be guided in mysterious ways. And Abdu'l-Karim is fascinated by the face of this teacher, and he looks at his face and he's drawn to it, and then he wakes up out of this dream. But he wakes up with this he says that this indescribable joy has replaced this depression that he was experiencing when he fell asleep. And so he describes his dream to a friend of his in Qazvin, and the friend says that the person you've dreamed of is the great scholar Sayyid Kazem of the Shaykhi school in Iraq. And so immediately Abdu'l-Karim packs his bags and sets out to attend the school of Sayyid Kazem in Iraq. And he arrives in Karbala, he enrolls in the school, and to his great surprise, he walks into his first class to find that there is Sayyid Kazem, the very face he saw in his dream, teaching a class on the very quotation that featured in his dream about making an effort and pursuing a noble purpose. And so Abdu'l-Karim spent several months attending the classes of Sayyid Kazem, and eventually Sayyid Kazem tells him that it's time for him to go back to his hometown and to just go about your business and await the coming of the promised one. And he promises Abdu'l-Karim that if he continues on his path, he will find the promised one. So Abdu'l-Karim goes back to Qazvin, and he goes about his business. He lives his life, and he keeps his heart open to any kinds of signs or clues that might happen. And one night, he experiences another dream, and he says, "One night I was so wrapped in prayer that I seemed to have fallen into a trance. There appeared before me a bird, white as the snow, which hovered above my head and alighted upon the twig of a tree beside me. In accents of indescribable sweetness, the bird voiced these words: 'Abdu'l-Karim, are you seeking the manifestation?' The memory of the beauty of that vision lingered long in my mind. I seemed to have tasted all the delights of paradise. My joy was irrepressible. The mystic message of that bird had penetrated my soul and was continually on my lips. I revolved it constantly in my mind. I shared it with no one, fearing lest its sweetness forsake me. A few years later, the call from Shiraz reached my ears. The day I heard it, I hastened to that city." And so that's the story of Abdu'l-Karim, one of many of these really touching stories of how individuals in their own ways, along their own journeys of seeking for understanding, seeking for truth, found the Bab and recognized him as the promised one. And I thought that this was a good story to connect with Wondrous Paradise, which says, as I hope you've heard the song, it says, "There is no paradise more wondrous for any soul than to be exposed to God's manifestation in his day, to hear his verses and believe in them." And so I hope this story enriches your experience of Wondrous Paradise. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video, when it's going to be Nowruz. It's going to be a new year for all of us. So I wish you all a very, very pleasant remainder of the fast if you're fasting. And I will see you in the next video. And in the meantime, if you can do the 3 usual things, that would be great: to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and share the Facebook event so that more people can follow along with the story too. I will see you in the next video for Nowruz. Okay, bye friends. See you soon.